Thank you, Angela and Ryan, for being here with us morning. Kick things off on a Friday.
Yeah.
So, both of you started as entrepreneurs at a really early age. Ryan, you went to college, to Harvard, at the age of 15, but that's also where you started your first business.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Tell everybody about
Yeah, so good morning, everyone, by the way.
it.
How's everybody feeling this morning? Good? Good. I'm feeling great. Yesterday was a lot of rain in New York. Angela and I were on a flight that was supposed to take off at 7, and we hung out at the airport for 3
Didn't take
hours.
off to like 10 something, right?
Yeah, got in at 1 a.m. And that's the fun and the beauty, I think, of making a commitment not only to your own business, but also to making sure once you know how to fly, you're sharing your stories and experiences so that other people can also have wind beneath their wings. And so, to your question, I started at Harvard looking for how I could make the most money possible. And at the time, the job where I could make the most money was the job that no one else wanted to do, which was dorm crew. Now, dorm crew is you just go around, knock on the door after all the parties and everything and say, hey, dorm crew, and then you clean the toilets. Now, cleaning the toilets actually paid more than every other job. It was $12.50 an hour back in 1994 and 95 when I first started college. Now, I understood, though, very quickly, though, that really was much different from how I wanted to make a living and how I wanted to make money. And so I fell back on a skill that I learned in high school because I didn't take home economics or shop. I went to Stockton Barber College, and I actually learned how to cut hair, and I decided to start a barber shop out of my dorm room. And it was pre-frosh weekend, so the weekend where all of the aspiring seniors who wanted to come to Harvard actually come to visit the campus. And one of my best friends was made that year because he needed to get a haircut. He was from Philadelphia. Now, you know how Philly guys are about their fades, right? He was from Philadelphia, and the nearest barber shop was all the way in Central Square. And somebody gave him a tip that I was cutting hair in my freshman dorm room, and he came by, got a haircut. And I know that haircut was great because he met his wife pre-frost weekend, and yeah.
That was the best $8 he ever spent.
That's right, for sure.
Angela, you also started as a teenager. You started your first business with your sister at 17, which, I mean, I think most of us know about pastry, but tell us how it came about.
So my family's already in the business, and my sister and I were interested in fashion. I knew since about like maybe 9 that I wanted to be in fashion. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I was really excited to become a part of it. And my sister and I, we thought of a name. We thought of the first collection. We started it from scratch. It was actually a licensing company, so we owned a part of it. And we traveled the world. I learned the back end side of the business. That's kind of how I learned how everything runs outside of just design. Pastry kind of helped me expand my mind and learn how businesses run. And we had a long run. The company went 66 million plus, and it was international as well. So, I just learned a lot about the business really early, which helped me as I'm growing now as an entrepreneur.
You mentioned your family. Of course, you come from one of the most famous black families in the country when it comes to entrepreneurship. What did growing up with your dad and your uncle around companies like Def Jam and Fat Farm teach you about business?
Man, so much wisdom came from my family. My uncle, he done so many different businesses, so he'd always tell me, find one thing and focus on it. It's really hard for me because I'm a creative and I'm like always all over the place, but I think that's one of the things he taught me. My dad kind of always just told me to put my best foot forward, and I kind of watched them lead by example. So just being around it, I absorbed a lot of different, just how to run a business, how to be around it, and how to follow your passion straight through. I think a lot of people go for money before they go for passion, and it's really important to follow your passion before you follow the money because that'll follow later.
So, Ryan, you didn't have that benefit of growing up, in the footsteps of entrepreneurship. You told me that everything that you learned from reading books, talking to the right people, and some real-world experience. So,
Sure.
what did you read, and who did you talk to? How did you learn to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, my parents are actually missionaries in the Salvation Army. So that means that they sacrificed a life, almost sacrificed their lives, or sacrificed treasures on earth in favor of serving others. Now, I'm sure they have a lot of treasures stacked up in heaven, and they quickly came to realize that when I got accepted to Harvard, cashing in treasures in heaven wasn't necessarily how they could actually pay my Harvard tuition. So they also realized that treasures in heaven are not an earthly insurance policy. So they also looked at me and said, hey, you're going to Harvard, you're going to be the insurance policy. And so while I was at school, I quickly learned that the legacy that would be created would be founded on the relationships that I made. And as you sit here in this auditorium and you look around at the other folks that are here, they're here for knowledge. They are here because they're passionate about entrepreneurship. They're here because they're passionate about black business. I was able to find and communicate and connect with people on Harvard's campus that also had those same passions, people that eventually came and invested in my business, SuperPhone, today. And also I had a mentor who was actually my resident advisor because, while I was at school, I told everyone that I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, mostly because it made my father very happy that his 15-year-old son wants to be a neurosurgeon. But really, I wanted to be a music producer. And three times, and I think what Angela was talking about was following your passion, I was on academic probation because I invested and focused my time on learning how to be the best music producer I could possibly be. And I was basically reading CD credits and trying to emulate the sounds of Jermaine Dupri or whoever else I was listening to so I could become a great music producer. And three times, there was a resident advisor by the name of Sandy Green. He's now a professor at USC in business. He went and advocated on my behalf in front of the administrative board to say, look, this young man, although he may be struggling academically, it's not because of any lack of passion or any lack of desire or any lack of persistence. He's just found a different passion that's outside of the course load, and he's pursuing it with a voracious appetite, and he should be allowed to stay. And I actually was able to still graduate on time. And even better, my parents were very disappointed. Look, their son, they had trained, they had groomed, they had invested so much time so I could get to Harvard so early, and they would get the letter, hey, your son is on academic probation again. And so I surprised them when we graduated. Harvard doesn't have a valedictorian. The person who gets to deliver the Harvard oration is the person who writes the best speech. So I figured if my parents were coming and they felt a little type of way that I was on academic probation so many times, I could surprise them by writing an incredible speech. And I actually was selected as the Harvard orator, and I surprised my father that year because the guy who introduced me said, hey, here's the only guy I know who after $120,000 and 4 years of grueling education would have the guts to tell his parents that he wanted to be an R&B singer.
That's a lot of passion.
Yes.
But you mentioned persistence, which for your next stage was really important because it took you 5 years of trying to be a music producer to get your first break. And also a little loan from the Bank of Dad
Yes.
to get there. So what were those 5 years like?
Hey, listen, I think that really you start to understand how real your desire for success is when you hit the bottom and you still can't imagine yourself doing anything else. And that's what happened for me. I came out of school. I had a little business plan. My business plan was I'm going to sell beats for $200. And if I sell 5 beats a week, that's $1,000. And it's 52 weeks in the year, that's $52,000. And that was my simple business plan. Now, as you guys know, projections in business rarely actually are met in the first year of business, right? So for me, I was -1,000. It started getting to negatives, right? And I found myself actually basically homeless behind a barbershop. And one of my collaborators, his brother had a barbershop, and said, "Hey, look, Ryan, I see you out here struggling, but you love to do music. Here's a garage that's in the back. You can set up your music equipment." And I got to a point where literally I was sneaking across the street to Store 24, get crackers just so I could eat. And I still, even during that time, and you really have to think about this. This is a Harvard graduate, right? 19 years old, senior at Harvard, in a garage with a little, MPC 2000, sneaking across the street to steal crackers so I could eat in the morning, have some energy so I could get back to it. I knew that even at that point, there was nothing that I wanted to do more than actually be great at being a music producer. And they say overnight success takes 10 years. It took me 8 before I got that break. I got a meeting with Puffy, and everything changed from that moment. But the preparation meeting the opportunity, they say that's the equation for luck. Preparation meeting opportunity. And that wilderness period for me was a time of deep introspection and preparation, so that when that opportunity came, I was ready. And my life changed almost instantly at that moment. But the time, the energy, the preparation, I think was critical in making sure that I could be ready for that opportunity when it came.
Angela, you've been nodding along this whole time.
I'm listening. He's right.
He's right. And I know that one of your big rules of how you conduct yourself as an entrepreneur is that you have to be okay with failure. Can you talk about some of the times that, things didn't really turn out the way that you wanted them to?
I mean, that happens all the time. There's a lot of times, you get into business and you start and you have this grand plan and you think, all right, it's going to go like this, and by this year, I'll be making this much, and this will be doing this. And it doesn't always work like that. Like, for me, I am a serial entrepreneur, so I've done a lot of different businesses, and sometimes they fail. But to me, my biggest lessons come through failure, and they shape and mold you. So you have to be willing to fail to kind of get to that next place. And for me, I would say one of them is I opened a store in Brooklyn, Angela I Am, and it was a boutique store. And around the time I was pregnant, and so I didn't have as much time. I wound up having my baby kind of early, and I realized I had bit off more than I can chew. I had to close it down. And it was just a learning curve. It was like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket if you're not ready for that, And that was one time I can talk about that was definitely a failure. And I'm okay with that. But I appreciate all of life's lessons. I just feel like I've grown as I fail, and I just learn more and more.
I think one of the coolest things about both of you that you have in common is that you're both creatives. You both started businesses that really leverage the audience that you've built up, but that take ownership of the platform. So, Angela, can you tell everyone about your Purpose app?
Yes, that is my new baby. I launched that in March. The Purpose app is really just inspirational information, really for women entrepreneurs. I have a section in there called Women in Business, which is like advertisement space. You're in a great, it's a whole network of women in business in different areas, whether different countries, cities, states, wherever you're at. But really just inspiration. I feel like we all need inspiration. And the reason I named it Purpose is because I decided anything I do from here on forward, I'm doing with a purpose. And it's like, what is your purpose in life? I think that's a question that you have to always ask yourself. Are you walking in your purpose? And for me, I know I am. I do stuff because I love giving back. And with my Purpose app, I give other people platforms, whether you are in music, whether you are just an entrepreneur or even a blogger. I like extending my platform. So that's my whole thing with Purpose.
You mentioned also that you're a serial entrepreneur. You have another digital platform, a fitness platform, yes. Built Not Bought.
Built Not Bought. So that's all about, I feel like in this day and time, everyone wants things really quickly. And to me, it's about building your mind, body, soul. And I don't mind. Go do what you have to do. If you need to get your boobs done, do whatever you need to do. I say do it. But before you go down that route, do everything you can within your power to make sure that you're mentally ready and healthy. You know what I mean? And so on that platform, you buy in, you basically get a meal plan and every day a different workout for a week at a time. But I'm all about just being healthy mentally. It's really important. So that's what the platform is, Built Not Bought.
And Ryan, your platform is all about text messaging.
Yes.
Explain SuperPhone.
Yeah. So I would say for me, my success in business at this juncture is really based on 5 A's, 5 A's. First is attract. Second is acquire. Third is analyze. Fourth, automate. And fifth, act. Okay? Attract, acquire, analyze, automate, act.
He slowed down so that y'all could get those all. You got them?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I see all these recordings, et cetera. I'm sure you could refer back to the live stream or the recording. But for me, I realized very early on, and really my first breakout success in the music business was understanding the pathway to disruption. The pathway to disruption. And so I think right now we live in a moment in time in our history where we are as close to equal opportunity as there has ever been. We can actually build a business without brick, without mortar, without steel, without oil. You can take a concept, you can look at a problem, you can identify a challenge, and through technology and through the information that's available to us, I mean, they say that there's more information now available to an 8-year-old child than Bill Clinton had when he was in office as the president. That's the amount of information, the wealth of information that's available to us. We have to learn how to seek out and leverage that information so that we can build solutions to challenges. My challenge was that I was building audiences online. I was building audiences on social platforms and relying on those social platforms to manage my most important relationships. Instagram, Facebook, MySpace, Vine, Snapchat, YouTube. And then once I built those audiences, those platforms got smart and said, hey, Ryan, you want to reach those people? Pay us. Pay us for Facebook advertising. Pay us to promote your Instagram posts. And I realized that the beauty of a real connection, whether it's a business connection, a personal connection, a supporter, a fan, a follower, a friend, for me, is to actually be able to communicate with them directly outside of a social platform. And for me, that medium of communication is text messaging. So I gave my phone number out to 550,000 followers on Twitter, and the response was incredible. And I decided to sell an album this way. 35,000 people texted me of the 550,000 followers I had. And I built a simple automation chain. Every single person that texts me will get a text back. Thanks for reaching out, but I don't have your information. I'd love to stay in touch. They would receive a link. They fill their information in. It would check my store. If they didn't buy my album, it would gently recommend they did so.
Gently.
And the beauty is that that line, that direct line of communication completely inverted my conversion metrics. Because when you broadcast one to many, your odds of conversion are that one to many. When you broadcast one to one, your odds of conversion are 50-50 because someone in that conversation is going to get sold. Either you're going to sell whatever product or service you're offering, or they're going to sell you a reason why they're not buying. In both cases, that information is extremely valuable. And so I attracted the audience on social. I acquired the audience by actually getting their cell phone number. I analyzed what they were interested in doing. Were they buying or giving me a reason why they weren't buying? Once I realized a lot of repetitive activities, hey, I'd like to know your information, I automated. And based on that data and analysis, I learned how to act more efficiently in my business.
You said you built a platform, which sounds so simple, but you actually went out and learned some of the skills to build a platform. Like you got a new skill set to take the next level as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, just when I was talking about the equal opportunity that exists today, there is a language. Some of you may have taken French or Italian or Spanish when you were in school. There's a language now that for us to really take advantage of this opportunity, we have to understand how to speak the language of software. And for me, I didn't take this when I was in college, but I was able to find a course online through Code Academy, which taught me how to code. And I was able, through that course, to be able to build that simple automation chain so that all of the intent that I had, I really had an intent. Every single person that texted me, I did want to know where they were from, what their name was, what they were interested in buying from me, or how they were interested in collaborating or supporting. And so that ability to talk to technology and say, this is what I need you to do. We're not at the stage now where you can sit in front of a computer and say, hey, I want you to build this app. You actually need developers and builders. Eventually we'll get there, but for right now, it was important for me to understand the language of how to speak to software, how to learn how to code. And I think if you're thinking about now how you could change your career pathway, I would say that whatever career pathway you're considering, definitely invest some time in understanding that language, because that's really the language that is foundational to the way that the future will operate.
And when you talk about all of that data, you're not just communicating with the audience saying, hey, follow me. You can tell who's bought your album, who's bought a t-shirt, who's come to a concert, how much money they've spent with you. Tell us about the kinds of audience mining that you're able to do with this information?
Yeah, well, listen, I would say that one of my heroes in the music industry, I'm sure you guys have all heard of him, Sean Carter, right? And I think he most recently, I was reading that he's one of the first hip-hop billionaires, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if y'all know the history of Jay-Z, it took him about 20 years to get to that billion-dollar mark. And when I first went to Silicon Valley, I saw young people who were my age and younger who reached the billion-dollar valuation mark for their business or even personal wealth within 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years from zero, an idea at MIT, to $1 billion in personal net worth. And I started to think, okay, here's one of the legends, someone I really look up to. It took him 20 years to get there. How did someone accelerate that process so aggressively? The answer is data. When Jeff Bezos wants to be able to reach his audience, he doesn't need to tweet to reach his audience. In fact, if you have an Amazon ID, if you have Amazon Prime, if you've ever ordered anything from Amazon, there is a client record of first your name, email, IP address, wherever you're from, but also data which is contextual around you as a person. What recommendations have you responded to? What books have you actually bought when they've been recommended to you? What products do you buy? What kind of groceries do you like if you actually get Amazon Prime delivery within an hour? What do you select in terms of delivery times? What are you willing to spend to get your stuff earlier and faster? And for me as a musician, for so long, I was always in a black box of data. It was siloed. Whoever had bought my record from iTunes, iTunes owned that data, but if I wanted to send an email to anyone who'd ever bought an album, I would ask them, but due to privacy concerns, I wasn't able to reach them. And so I believe, just as I had talked about earlier, for you as an entrepreneur, the capability exists today for you to actually own the relationship the same way that Amazon owns that relationship with all of their customers. In the businesses that you're creating, I urge you to find ways that you can own the relationship with your customers, because that is the way that you can accelerate the building of wealth, not only for yourself, but for generations to follow.
Ryan, you've talked so much. Yeah, absolutely. You've talked so much about technology. And here at Forward, we have a whole Innovate track. We've dedicated a lot of programming to things like helping entrepreneurs build their digital community, helping them monetize their social. Both of you have digital business. Why did you decide to start a digital business?
A lot about what he was speaking about. I do feel like it's really important to have direct communication with the people who follow you, and data is super important, which is why I collect mine on the back end of my app and all that stuff. I actually learned about that really young. I went to a church that promoted and told us to be entrepreneurs and get websites. So I started that process at a really young age. So data is super, super, super important. But for me, I've always just been a person who likes to extend my platform, like I said, to other people. And I've always just been trying to figure out what's the best way for me to utilize my 6.1 million followers. How can the business that's on the corner that may only have 100 eyes, how can I give you my eyes? And so for me, it's just giving that helping hand and helping other businesses grow. And that's just a passion of mine. Like, I love helping other people, other women, whoever it is that needs help. It's like extending my hand and using what I have for them. And I learned that through my uncle as well. He's like, use your platform for greatness, like do something with it. Don't just have it and just be about yourself. You know what I mean? Like, that's selfish. So for me, it's just about helping other people grow their businesses.
You're both so forward thinking. Ryan, was text specifically something that you wanted to get into because of the trends in mobile?
Yeah, text is super important. I mean, I think that right now, I probably know more people that won't even answer a phone call. They say, oh, just text me, right? I think text, honestly, for right now, could arguably be the dominant form of human communication. When you look at WhatsApp, when you look at in Asia at WeChat, when you look in Japan at Line, when you look at just text messaging here, Instagram direct messaging, they needed to actually build a communication back end so that people could actually text. And the other beauty of text messaging, I would say, versus email, right, is that every time you send an email, it starts a new thread. It starts a new thread. So you send an email, hey, Black Enterprise Weekend, starts a new thread. Oh, travel for such and such, it's a new thread. Oh, your course load, it's a new thread. And so with text, the beauty is that it's a conversation that's never ending. And I know a lot of my friends who actually got a 617 area code because that was their first area code when they started at Harvard. That's the first cell phone number they got. And over time, that phone number, unless you need to block somebody or you get tired of it, that phone number actually becomes part of your identity almost, right? People become very, very attached to their phone numbers. And so people change their emails. Like, I can't reach my friends at their harvard.edu emails anymore, but I can reach them on text. So the beauty for me about text is the fact that when I'm on text with someone, I actually am having a living conversation with them until they either block me, change their number, or die. And that's what's awesome to me about text.
Not extreme at all. So in a few minutes, we're going to start taking questions. If you guys have questions, you can start to get them ready. But before we get to you, Angela, I want to ask you, we talked a little bit about working with family and the challenges that come with that and how you really have to wear sort of different hats professionally and personally. A lot of our entrepreneurs are family businesses. Can you share how you navigated that?
It gets tricky, right? Because so my sister and I, obviously, when we started pastry, you have to know how to turn off my sister mode and, okay, this is about business, so now we're business women and we have to handle this, whether you are having a disagreement that's personal, but then you have to take that off and be like, okay, this is what's going to be best for the business. So it's good to do it, but you really have to be strong-minded to work with your family or friends, right? Because a lot of people say, oh, well, I lost my friend because we started working together. But it's knowing how to, like, draw that line. Like, okay, you know, I would literally be arguing with my sister right before we go on radio or something, and I have to be like, oh, I just love her. And I'm like, I really want to elbow her, you know what I mean? But you have to know where to draw that line and where to say, you know what, this is about business, and when we done, we're going to have this conversation about the personal.
I'll see you outside.
Exactly. But I literally remember that happening a couple of times, because we would be around each other 24/7. So not only you family, but you're building up this business, and you have to know what's best and when to say, no, this is not going to be a conversation today. Let's save this for tomorrow, and let's put this aside and handle what's business right now.
And Ryan, when we talked about your philosophy as an entrepreneur, you told me that you really only have one rule that you follow, and that is to keep the promises you make to yourself.
Yeah. I believe that trust is built on promises kept. And when you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to be able to bet on yourself. And being able to bet on yourself means that you have to trust yourself. And in order to build trust in yourself, whether it's just making up your bed every morning or going to the gym or walking for 30 minutes, whatever it is, it's those mundane tasks that you commit to that lead to long-term results. And so for me, to be able to have the risk tolerance as an entrepreneur, to bet on myself, you need to be able to make promises and keep those promises to yourself. And so, yeah, I definitely live by that one rule.
Okay. Do we have questions out in the audience?
And while we wait for that microphone to get there, if there's any questions that you have directly for me that potentially don't get addressed right now during this session, I actually have a URL. It's textryan.com. You could go to textryan.com. You leave your number, you'll see my technology in action. I'm currently on text with more than 96,000 people. I respond to everyone. So if you have questions that aren't addressed here and you still would like to connect, and really it's about connecting, textryan.com. You don't even have to remember my cell phone number. Textryan.com. Leave your cell phone number, and I'll text you right back.
Good morning, everyone. Adrienne, I work in PR. So, Ryan, my question is for you, and I commend you for all of the things that you've done. Congratulations. But when you have a personality that is more for the forefront, but you end up working in the background, how do you deal with that? How does that make you feel to be, obviously, Ryan, the Harvard grad, and you're working in tech and everything, but then you also have that passion for music? So how does that resonate?
Yeah, for me, they live. I chose an area where I could help people that actually have larger platforms than I do. So, I mean, listen, being a Black-owned or Black-founded technology company, you can all imagine the challenges that come with that. I think when our friend from Ally talked about it, there's very, very small percentage of venture-backed technology companies are black. And so to win business, like the last phone number we powered was Miley Cyrus. She has 94 million followers on Instagram and gave out a phone number. She tested every other platform before she decided, okay, we're going to go with Ryan's platform. And so for me, it's really, like Angela was saying, it's about being the wind beneath the wings of another platform and just making sure that our technological infrastructure is going to be such that when people bet on black, they know that they're actually betting on reliable, they're betting on stability, they're betting on scalability, they're betting on everything that we want to represent for what we've come from and what we want to give to the world.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Raven Solomon. I'm a keynote speaker and an author. So my question is about left brain, right brain balance. You both seem to have that. And for those of us who do have that but struggle to find the harmony between the two in our professional careers, my question is, what advice would you give someone looking to find balance and harmony in their left brain, right brain balance? And then what does that look like for you? So is it like I have to be in the studio 2 times a month in order to feel like I've got that harmony?
I'm going to let you take that.
Yeah.
I would say for balance, it's just about figuring out what works for you. I think everyone's balance is different. I would recommend writing down, every month just so you can kind of regroup. I'm a big person. I like on writing. So just writing everything down and figuring out 100% of you and allotting all of that. Okay, this can go to this can go to this. But you have to be realistic, right? Because I think a lot of times we put more on ourselves than what we can do. So I've learned to kind of write down what I'm working on personally, what I'm working on like business-wise, and just a lot in the right amount of time. And that's allowed to change month to month, right? That's why you kind of always have to go back and say, okay, am I actually putting my time towards this, or is this being neglected? And if it is, then you just have to figure it out. It's literally like a pie, like making a pie and sitting there like, okay, this is here, this is here. If you have kids, you got to put your time here. Mm-hmm. But making sure you're making enough time for yourself, because the machine can't work without you. So without like that self-time, I feel like nothing can work. It's like making sure you're well-oiled and ready, and then everything underneath that. Hope that helps.
Okay. Testing.
Okay. Good morning. How you guys doing?
Great.
Well,
Good. Dr. Tommy Watson, motivational speaker, coach, movie producer, and now rapper. So Ryan, we need to collaborate, brother.
Oh, okay.
Some stuff. So I want to know.
You got your demo ready for him?
I do.
It's expensive.
Make it happen, man. We'll make it happen. But again, appreciate you guys being here and sharing your nuggets this morning. Can you tell us what is probably one of the most creative, out-of-the-box things you guys did to grow your business that no one else kind of dropped on you? You just kind of had this idea and you just knew within your spirit there's something you should do. Just tell us a little bit about, following your gut and doing something outside the box that you did to grow your business.
Yeah, I think we actually talked about it. I just gave my cell phone number to everybody. You know what I'm saying? With 550,000 followers on Twitter, you got to take a leap of faith to put your phone number out, right? And I'll say that at the very beginning, I didn't have a platform. So my battery overheated, my messaging apps all crashed. And even having as much success as I had, having the actual ability, I could have paid for a platform. I just couldn't find it. And so that to me represented an opportunity that I could seize upon. And arbitrage really always happens with the early mover. So the fact that you're in this room and thinking about this, and maybe you hadn't thought about this before, being the early movers now in terms of audience ownership are what will separate the businesses in this room that we're talking about 5 years from now on this stage and the ones that may need to recalibrate it. So for me, it was just about taking that leap of faith, giving my cell phone number out to everyone, realizing the challenges that I had would be challenges that a solution that I created could be productized, and then productizing that solution and building a business around it. A second business, actually. Right?
Second.
Yeah.
Angela, out-of-the-box things you did to grow your business?
There's always a lot of different things, but I would say, like, for what he was saying is, like, if you do have an out-of-the-box idea, go for it. I think a lot of the times we're in our head so much that we think, would this work? Is this crazy? Just do it. You know what I mean? Like, have a plan, take action, and do it. If it's something you feel like is going to work, you'll be upset if someone else turns around and does it first. So just go for it. You know, I mean, I've done a lot of things that I haven't seen before. I've never seen what I did as far as purpose, as far as extending my platform. I don't see it. I wish there was more of it. I think people need to uplift the people next to them. So I think it's just about going and doing what you love. And if it's something that seems crazy, it's probably going to work.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, good morning, Ryan, and good morning, Angela. Thank you so much for joining, just sharing your wisdom with us today. Ryan, I want you to know that you have a new customer, so I'm definitely excited to talk to you. My name is Brian Oles. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Black Speakers Network, and I was just curious, for both of your perspectives, how do you start the process of managing a high-volume network after a certain point? And what I mean by that is just recently, Carlos, the MC, he said, you know, hey, follow me on Instagram, and I'll follow back. And I turned to my person sitting next to me. I said, well, you can only follow up to about 7,500, you know, people back. So, you know, I love the thought process that you bring to the industry, which is building that level of connectivity. But once you get to a certain point, how do you start to balance the high tech and high touch? Because at a certain point, I'm sure everybody in this room wants to talk to you right afterwards, but how do you start to manage that as you grow?
Yeah, I strongly believe that it's about your value proposition, not just for yourself, but for who you can offer to your partners, right? So when you think about a lot of the great technology companies, there is always sort of that second man, right? Bill Gates, Paul Allen, you know, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, right? Jay-Z, Dame Dash, right? So these partnerships are created because scientifically, and this is scientifically proven, we only have the capacity in our minds for 150 close relationships, right? And so the platform that I built actually builds a data set which helps you to invest your time in the relationships that are going to be most valuable to you. So literally in my phone, because I'm tracking everything, I can tell how long it takes for somebody to respond to my text. I can tell how long I've spent on the phone with people. I can tell how many times I've called and people ignore my phone call, right? Those people start falling lower and lower and lower on the priority chain, because I think you've heard it 100 times. Why make someone a priority who's just making you an option, right? So for me to have a data-backed analysis on which relationships are going to yield the most potential, that's the way that I actually make decisions on how I spend my time. We all have limited time. Yeah, the clock resets every 24 hours, but for me, I try to wake up and be very intentional, make a list of 30 phone calls per day. Phone calls, not texts, 30 phone calls per day. Not because I'm a salesman for any reason other than I would like to sell the idea that we can actually change the course of the wealth creation in our community. And so I got to pick up the phone, whether I'm calling Butch for Black Enterprise, or I'm calling an intern, or I'm calling a mentee, or I'm calling a young black business that I feel could actually be beneficial to Hot 97 or some other of my partners, or I'm calling an investor. I make that list because even 30 phone calls a day is only 1/5 of my capacity for close relationships. Close relationships are built on two elements, in my opinion. Number one, frequency of contact and communication. So if people ain't answering your phone calls, they probably don't want to do business with you, or they're too busy for you at that time. Time is also everything. Frequency of communication and proximity. So as often as I can, I escalate my most important relationships into in-person meetings, because those are the most rare in terms of actually managing a large network. So those would be my that would be my counsel to you on managing relationships at scale. Really, you want to create an inverted pyramid where you find that one person, your Steve Wozniak, your Paul Allen, that can help you build the kind of business that can affect people in the way that Microsoft and Apple were able to.
Okay. Did you want to add?
He summed it up. I mean, that was amazing.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for sharing all of this with us on this Friday morning. Everyone give it up for Ryan and Angela.
I want to tell before we close, I want everyone to please download the Purpose app. It's in Apple stores, it's in the Google Play, it's in all of that. So it's Purpose by Angela Simmons. Please download it. There's inspiration to your phone every morning. Download it, please.
Thanks. Okay.
We done?
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
I'll take it.
Let's give them a round of applause.